Okay, well, we're going to try and move it along here, and next we'd like to bring up Chris Allman over here. He's going to be talking to us about motor fuel freedom. Everybody, welcome, Chris.
Michigan motor fuel freedom. This is something that I'm personally going to push for. I've gone through this with Tony DeMott. He thinks this is something that's worthwhile. You can go on to the next slide. So the mandate that we have is that the EPA has placed limits on the minimum amount of ethanol in gallons to be produced for motor fuels in the United States. And today, this is cut off a little bit, but the crossover point was somewhere in 2011. So this pink line here, it describes the minimum amount of ethanol that is to be produced in the United States for motor fuels. The blue line here is the motor fuel consumption in the United States. Note that it is expected to decline as we go towards the future with all of the Obama mandates on fuel efficiency. Thank you. So going into the future, we expect motor fuel demand to decline. And so the minimum mandate exceeds 10% of the volume of gasoline sold in the United States. So the current mandate is 10%. The current mandate is that 10% of every gallon of gasoline will contain ethanol. So ironically, the EPA also mandates that motor fuels for general use contain no more than 10%. And oil companies must either sell vastly more E85 fuel or increase the ethanol blend ratio beyond 10%, or both. So, next slide. Wrong way. The problem is that the auto manufacturers and other groups that are associations of companies that produce both vehicles and watercraft and outdoor equipment, lawn implements, that sort of thing. They've stated they won't warranty their vehicles for E15 use, just 5% more than E10. So the other groups pictured below have entered into lawsuits to stop the ever-increasing mandates on motor fuels, the increased amount of ethanol in motor fuels specifically. So a lot of these logos you'll be familiar with. Some of them you might not be. The National Marine Manufacturers Association. A lot of companies that produce boats are members of the NMMA. Then there's the Outdoor Power Equipment Institute. These are the people that make your lawnmowers and your chainsaws and your weed whackers, these kind of things. And down here that's been cut off is the AMA, the American Motorcyclist Association.
Isn't that E85?
I'm sorry?
It's supposed to be E85.
E85?
So
No.
15% up.
No. But I know for a fact that Ford, GM, and Chrysler have stated that they won't warranty their vehicles for E15 use.
What is that? I never heard of E15.
E15 is something that the EPA is pushing for because of the previous slide. If we go back one slide. Yep. See, we have this disparity here, where we have this many gallons of fuel being sold, yet we have this many gallons of ethanol mandated to be produced by the EPA. So you can see the disparity here. You can't produce more ethanol than gasoline and still maintain a 10% blend ratio, unless you're fueling vehicles with purely ethanol.
So Chris, is the E15 15% ethanol, 85% gas?
Correct. Okay, so I'm full disclosure. I'm a powertrain engineer. I deal with engines and the fuels that are burned in them for a living. So E10 is what we all get in the pump today. That is 10% ethanol, 90% gasoline. E15 is 15% ethanol, 85% gasoline. 85 is 85% ethanol now, all right, 15% gasoline. So maybe that takes the it rolls back the stone a little bit for some people. Okay, so I apologize for that. I deal with this all the time. So, but anyway, when you see that white sticker on the gas pump, E85 is 85% ethanol, 15% gasoline. So, 2 slides. Move up 2 slides for me. So the last line I said was, the EPA says that E15 fuel is fine for your car. Yet the people that made your car say that they won't warranty your car with that fuel in it. So who will you believe? All right. So the facts are, ethanol blended gasoline isn't ideal for antique vehicles. As evidence a couple of weekends ago, we had the Woodward Dream Cruise. For those of you that live close to Woodward Avenue, that was either it was an overwhelming joy or a great inconvenience to you. But for antique vehicles, carburetors, a lot of these antique cars, these classic cars are still run on carburetors. Carburetors are no longer tuned properly, and so giving the layman's explanation for that is ethanol burns at an ideal air-fuel ratio of about 9:1. Gasoline burns at an ideal air-fuel ratio of 14:1. So the more ethanol you put in the fuel, the richer you have to adjust your carburetor to make it burn properly. Ethanol fuel tends to lean out your engine if you don't have these sophisticated computer controls that most of our cars have today. So carburetors are no longer tuned properly when you start introducing E10, E15 even, and if you mistakenly put E85 in your carbureted vehicle, it probably wouldn't run very well at all. So your spark advance requirements are affected. With ethanol fuel, it takes longer to burn. There's a longer burn duration for ethanol. So you have to recalibrate the spark table in your vehicle to account for the ethanol blending of the fuel that you're burning. So valve seats, engine valves are the things that allow the air into the cylinder and allow the exhaust gases out of the cylinder. So valve seats experience higher wear due to the low lubricity. That's the slickness. There's additives in gasoline that allow the valves to slide better over the valve seats, to seal up better, and you experience higher wear due to the corrosiveness, the harshness, the dryness of the ethanol that's in your fuel. And in addition to that, ethanol is corrosive to older fuel system fittings and hoses and lines, and it just degrades conventional rubber hoses that have been used for the first 85 years of vehicle production. So ethanol is something that you can deal with, but you have to design the vehicle to run it. And it's something that the automakers, the big three, and all of those other overseas guys that are chipping away at volumes of our domestic manufacturers. You have to design the vehicle to burn this kind of stuff, and it costs extra money to do that.
Why are they mandating this?
Why are they mandating this? That is exactly the point of this conversation. Why are they mandating this? So there's a green initiative. People have been placed under the impression that ethanol is the green thing to do for the environment. Yes, it may burn cleaner, But you have to also consider that the production of ethanol is not energy neutral. It's energy negative. Because you have to burn fuels in order to sow the seeds of the corn, to harvest the corn. And especially the biggest contributor is if you have any idea how moonshine is made, ethanol is done by the same process. So you mash up the corn, you add some sugar, you let it sit in a vat, and you let it ferment. And as it ferments, you add yeast, of course. And as it ferments, the yeast converts the sugar into alcohol. And then the next step in the process is you have to heat up that mash and evaporate off the alcohol and then condense it in a coil in some means. And the heating of that mash is the most energy-intensive process of the whole thing. Yes?
How many pounds of corn does it take to make 1 gallon of gasoline?
Maybe you know the answer because I don't. Share it with everybody.
I don't know the answer. I've seen it one time before, and it's a lot. An awful lot.
It is an awful lot, that's for sure. But in order to heat up that mash, it takes fuel to do that. You have to raise the temperature of the mash. So it's a very energy negative proposition. Yes, sir.
One quick question.
Uh-huh.
I saw a program on TV, and they said by adding 10% ethanol to your gasoline, you were actually reducing the miles per gallon that you get.
Yes, that's absolutely true.
So what would be, there seems to be no advantage other than to the corn farmers.
There's absolutely no advantage. There's no advantage from an energy standpoint. There's no advantage from a fuel economy standpoint.
Fuel economy goes down when you bring ethanol up. Right?
Absolutely. And this goes back to my previous statement about the ideal air-fuel ratio. The scientific term is stoichiometric. It's actually a German word that we've inherited, but stoichiometric means ideal. So you have to operate within roughly 10% of the ideal air-fuel ratio in order to burn that fuel effectively. So, going back to my previous statement, the ideal air-fuel ratio of gasoline is 14.7 to 1. The ideal air-fuel ratio of ethanol is 9.5 to 1. So as you blend ethanol into your gasoline, you drop that ideal air-fuel ratio down. So what that means is air over fuel is air-fuel ratio, pounds of air per pounds of fuel. In order to drop that ratio, you have to add in more fuel. And so that's one thing. And by the way, the energy you get out of that fuel is less. You get less energy out of ethanol than you do from gasoline. So, yes, ma'am.
Well, according to that first chart you showed us, it appears that there's a real glut of ethanol that's being produced every year.
It would appear that way.
What are they doing?
I don't know. I don't know if they're actually producing that or not, but that is the mandate. I got that specifically from British Petroleum, BP. Yes?
Yeah, well, there's also a big problem when you store all that ethanol evaporates very quickly. So
It's very true.
a lot of that just, you make it, and if you don't use it right away, it just,
Yep. If you don't use it, it does evaporate. It does evaporate.
pollution.
Yep. And yeah, that is pollution, for sure. So, go on the next slide. So, ethanol blended gas isn't ideal for small engines either. You have two-stroke engines in your weed whackers. Some outboard engines, outboard marine engines are two-stroke, moving more to four-stroke these days. But two-stroke engines rely on a fuel-oil mixture for lubrication, and ethanol counteracts the lubrication that the oil provides. Like I said, ethanol it's very drying. It doesn't help get between those parts and keep those metal surfaces separated. Power sports engines, we're talking snowmobiles and motorcycles and jet skis. They were designed around pure gasoline, which is E0, 0% ethanol for years, and And these will likely have issues with higher ethanol blend ratios.
How do you compensate?
Well, a couple of things you have to do is one, you have to watch your rubber hoses and fittings very carefully. If you have a carbureted engine, the needle and seat which regulates the amount of fuel that goes into that carburetor, sometimes those are made, frequently those are made from rubber, and you know, the ethanol can degrade those. And like going back to what I said before, you have to tune your carburetor to put more fuel into that engine. But the vehicles that we drive today are computer controlled and feedback operated, so they're measuring the air-fuel ratio constantly. So they can deal with some small deviations in air-fuel ratio, but you know, not huge amounts. But so the air-fuel ratio in a modern computer-controlled car or motorcycle or things like that, they can deal with different blend ratios, but maybe the fuel system can't. So it's just something that we have to understand. As a general rule, the industry, both the automotive industry, the power sports industry, the marine industry, they've agreed that E10 is generally not harmful, but they're concerned about higher blend ratios, E15, E20, that kind of thing. Yes, sir.
Can you explain the difference between, like, you know, regular gas, mid-grade, and
Okay, that's a completely different issue, not related to ethanol blending.
okay.
But I can say that I can speak to that for just a moment. So we have regular fuel, mid-grade, and premium. 87 anti-knock index. That number that you see on the pump is called anti-knock index, AKI. So regular fuel is 87, mid-grade is 89, and around here premium is 93. So what that means, without going into too much detail, is how resistant the fuel is to pre-ignition or spark knock. So a lower number would tend to knock more. Maybe people are familiar with what spark knock is. If you've ever driven an older car and got a bad batch of fuel, your car it makes a sound like pennies in a coffee can kind of thing. We don't really see that much today because we spend a lot of time in dyno testing to calibrate around this stuff, and we have special sensors that listen for that sound that's going on in the engine, and we retard spark knock without anybody ever. We retard spark timing without anybody ever knowing it. But a regular grade fuel is less resistant to knock, so it's better for lower compression ratio engines, lower performance engines. Higher performance engines like your Corvettes, your higher end Mustangs, your Dodge Vipers, those kind of things. The manufacturer recommends premium fuel, and that's because they've designed the engine to burn that fuel. They're giving you more performance out of the engine, and it needs a better fuel to work.
Thank you.
All right, you're welcome. Next slide.
Chris, question over here?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, what's your experience with the Pantone engine?
Pantone engine.
Yeah.
Not familiar with the Pantone engine.
Runs on 75 to 80% water and gasoline or Coca-Cola or anything. And the exhaust is 100% oxygen. Have you heard of it?
I have not heard of that. I'll have to research
No,
that.
no kidding. We built it and $55 worth of parts out of Home Depot and built the machine and it runs.
Okay. Okay.
75,000 machines throughout the United States, and the government came down on all of them, trying to stop them.
It's more known in other countries as well, in the farming areas.
Okay.
They use it.
Okay. I'll have to research that some.
We'll give you the information.
Yeah. Okay. So ethanol blended gas, not ideal for marine applications. Outboard engines have similar problems as antique vehicles. Many boats aren't equipped with ethanol-resistant fuel system components, similar to those motorcycles and weed whackers and everything else. Sometimes the fuel tanks in boats are made of fiberglass, like the rest of the hull, and aluminum fuel tanks, and that can cause damage that will cost thousands of dollars to repair. Ethanol-fueled boats can experience dissociation of water and fuel systems, leading to engine stallouts and boaters stranded at sea. So again, E10 is probably okay for boats. Most marine manufacturers are okay with E10. Anything more than that, they're not okay with. Next slide, please.
So are you, just one quick, are you saying that like ethanol like melts plastic? Is that basically why? Because they have plastic fuel tanks, don't they? Or fiberglass fuel
It can, depending on the plastic. Depending on the plastic. Not all plastics are attacked by ethanol, but some are.
And a lot of marine engines use diesel.
Some marine engines do use diesel. Diesel is not subject to the ethanol blending mandate of the EPA. But diesel has its own issues that are best reserved for a different time. So, solution. Promote legislative action at the state level which returns the free market to motor fuel distribution and sales. Why should we be subject to EPA mandates that aren't in the best interests of the citizens of our state? So we have anticipated effects being removing Michigan motorists from the green agenda and place the choice of motor fuel in the consumer's hands. Let the people decide what fuel they want to burn in their car and what fuel specifically your manufacturer thinks is best. So, number two, we can allow Michigan's antique car cruisers, we have a big cruiser culture here, the opportunity to demand pure E0 fuels in their vehicles that their vehicles were designed for. And we can foster Michigan's recreational marine economy, huge marine economy in Michigan. We're surrounded by the Great Lakes. Via allowing pure E0 fuels to meet the demand of Michigan mariners. This is being done currently at marinas around the state, but that's about the only place you can get ethanol-free fuel is at a marina on the water. And I own a boat, and it's about a 50-cent premium per gallon to get ethanol-free gas. So, number four, we can satisfy the demand of Michigan's power sports enthusiasts. A lot of ORV, off-road vehicle licensees in the state. A lot of people like to take out their snowmobiles in the wintertime. And you know, these vehicles weren't designed for ethanol blended fuel. So why not give people the opportunity to demand this? So number five, give Michigan motorists access across the state the option of running the fuel, and this is cut off, that their manufacturer recommends, or running the fuel that the engines and their implements were designed for. Next slide, please. So always of interest is potential support and membership opportunities. We want to grow Campaign for Liberties, not only in Oakland County, but across the state everywhere. So by publicly championing this issue, we stand to make ourselves known to many people sensitive to this type of encroachment on personal liberties. There's more than 45 car clubs in Michigan. 7 of them are based in Oakland County. And many owners of vehicles with historic vehicle plates, they belong to a car club because that's really one of the few legal ways to drive your car, other than going to the shop to get it fixed. So you wonder why you see so many people around the state meeting at these cruising events. It's because if they have one of these historic plates, which it's economically favorable to do that. I think it's $10 or $15 for the plate for a number of years. But you can only use it to go to official car club events. So that's why you see them out there so often.
And driving on Sundays too.
Really, I didn't know that.
Retired law enforcement.
Okay. So there's over 803,000 registered boats, and many of them are recreational. The vast majority of them are recreational. All of them would prefer to use ethanol-free fuel. So there's 194,000 ORV licenses were issued in fiscal year 2012. A lot of those vehicles, most of those vehicles, I would venture to say, were designed around ethanol-free gasoline. And all those guys who cut their grass. So, next slide. So next steps, to change the fuel distribution law in the state and nullify EPA mandates requires legislative action at the state level. And the concept of how Michigan Campaign for Liberty will approach this issue, I personally have reviewed this with Tony DeMott, who's our state coordinator, and he's in favor of this, but the request he gave to me is he wants to see legislation. He wants me to draft a bill. I have no idea how to do that. I've never drafted a bill. So maybe someone in this room, just maybe, who there's someone in this room who has drafted a bill before and will be willing to help me. So if you want to volunteer your support, you can contact me, Chris Allman. I'm a deputy coordinator here at the Oakland County, Michigan Campaign for Liberty. Here is my email here, chrisallman@gmail.com. My phone number, which is half cut off, is 586-604-0501. I would very much appreciate your help. Give me a call. Thank you very much.